The desert wind carried the smell of gunpowder and death. Lieutenant Kate Morrison crouched behind a shattered mud wall, her rifle pressed against her shoulder. Blood soaked through her tactical vest. Not her blood, at least not yet. Around her, the silence screamed louder than the firefight that had ended 3 minutes ago. 11 bodies lay scattered across the Afghan hillside. 11 Navy SEALs who had walked into this valley with her at dawn. 11 warriors who would never see another sunrise. The ambush had been perfect. Too perfect. Someone had known they were coming. Someone had sold them out. Kate's hands trembled as she pressed her radio. Phantom 1-1 to command. We're down, all of them. I'm the only one left. Static answered her. Then a voice, distant and hollow. Extraction inbound. Hold your position. Hold her position. Against 40 Taliban fighters who knew exactly where she was. Kate checked her ammunition. 10 magazines left, 60 rounds between her and eternity. The Taliban came at her in waves. She put them down methodically, one after another. Each trigger pull was a prayer for the men who would never go home. Each expended casing was a promise that their deaths would not be meaningless. 14 enemy fighters fell before the extraction helicopter thundered over the ridge. As the crew chief hauled her into the bird, Kate looked down at the valley floor. Her team lay where they had fallen, American flags painted in blood on foreign soil. The crew chief was shouting something, but Kate couldn't hear him. All she could hear was the silence where her brothers' voices used to be. They called her Phoenix after that, not because she rose from the ashes, but because she was the only thing left standing when everything else had burned. Camp Pendleton, California, present day. The California sun beat down on Lieutenant Kate Morrison as she stepped through the main gate of Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. Her duffel bag hung from one shoulder. Her secrets weighed heavier than any gear she carried. The orders in her pocket were simple. Temporary assignment as Navy Liaison Officer to coordinate joint operations between Special Warfare Units and Marine forces stationed at Pendleton. The truth was considerably more complicated. Kate observed everything as she walked across the compound. The patrol patterns, the sight lines, the rhythm of the base. 2 years of surviving in hostile territory had trained her to catalog threats automatically. Old habits died hard, especially when they kept you alive. At the administration building, a young Marine corporal looked up from his paperwork. His name tape read, Price. He couldn't have been more than 20 years old, with nervous energy that marked him as fresh from boot camp. Ma'am, Price said, snapping to attention, how can I help you? Kate handed over her orders. Lieutenant Morrison, reporting for temporary assignment. I'm supposed to check in with the base commander. Price scanned the paperwork, his eyebrows rising slightly. Yes, ma'am, Colonel Cross is expecting you. 3rd floor, office 312. As Kate made her way through the building, she felt the weight of curious stares. A female Navy officer walking through Marine Corps halls drew attention. She kept her expression neutral, professional. The mask she'd perfected over 8 years of operating in environments that didn't always welcome her presence. Colonel Vincent Cross's office was utilitarian and sparse. Military memorabilia covered the walls. The colonel himself was a weathered man in his early 50s, with steel gray hair and eyes that seemed to measure everyone who entered. Lieutenant Morrison, Cross said, rising to shake her hand. His grip was firm, testing. Welcome to Camp Pendleton. I trust the flight from Virginia was smooth? Yes, sir. No issues. Good. Please, sit. Cross settled behind his desk and opened a file. Kate recognized the classified markings on the folder. Her real file. Not the sanitized version that Price had seen downstairs. I've reviewed your record, Cross said carefully, though I suspect there's quite a bit in here that's above even my clearance level. Kate remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. Cross smiled slightly at her discretion. What I can tell you is that Pentagon has specific concerns about information security at this installation. We've had 3 SEAL operations compromised in the last 6 months. 3 teams that walked into situations that should have been clean. People died, Lieutenant. Kate's jaw tightened. She knew exactly how that felt. Your mission, Cross continued, is to identify the source of these leaks while maintaining your cover as a liaison officer. You'll have access to joint training exercises, personnel files, and communication logs, but you'll be operating alone. No official support, no backup. If your cover is blown, Pentagon will disavow any knowledge of your true purpose here. Understood, sir. There's one more thing. Cross's expression darkened. Operation Phantom Ridge, Afghanistan, 2 years ago. I know what happened there. Kate's hands clenched in her lap. She forced them to relax. That operation was also compromised, Cross said quietly. Someone sold intelligence to the enemy. Your entire team was lost because someone in our community traded American lives for money. I want you to know that finding whoever did this, finding whoever is still doing this, that matters to me personally. Kate met his eyes. It matters to me too, sir. I'm sure it does. Cross stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Your quarters are in building 847. The mess hall is open from 0500 to 2100 hours. Report to Major Thompson tomorrow at 0800. He'll get you oriented. Dismissed. Kate saluted and left. She was 3 steps into the hallway when a voice stopped her. Walk like that around here, you're going to get made in about 5 minutes. Kate turned. An older man stood in the corridor. Late 60s, maybe 70. He wore civilian clothes, khaki pants and a polo shirt, but he carried himself with unmistakable military bearing. His eyes were sharp, assessing. A scar ran along his left forearm, the kind you got from shrapnel, not accidents. Excuse me? Kate said. You move like a shooter, the man said. Every Marine on this base is going to notice it, especially if you're supposed to be just another Navy staff officer. Kate's mind raced. Who was this man? How much did he know? I don't know what you mean, she said carefully. The man smiled. It was a knowing smile, not unkind. Sure you don't. I'm Frank Reeves, civilian contractor. I run tactical training programs here. He extended his hand. Kate shook it. His grip was still strong despite his age. I've been around SEALs for 30 years, Lieutenant. I know how they move, how they think, how they pretend to be something they're not when the mission requires it. Reeves's eyes held hers. And I know when someone's carrying the weight of fallen brothers. Kate felt her breath catch. This man saw too much, knew too much. I don't know what you're really doing here, Reeves continued, his voice low enough that no one else could hear. And I'm not asking. But when you need someone you can trust, someone who understands what it means to operate in the shadows, you come find me. Building 321. I'm there most days. Before Kate could respond, Reeves nodded politely and walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway with a dozen questions and no answers. The Bachelor. Officer quarters were standard military housing, clean, functional, anonymous. Kate unpacked efficiently, a skill honed through countless deployments to places where you never knew how long you'd be staying. Her personal items were few: a photo of her SEAL team, taken 3 months before Phantom Ridge. 11 men grinning at the camera, arms around each other's shoulders, invincible in their youth and training. Kate kept that photo face down in her drawer. Some ghosts were too painful to look at every day. As evening approached, Kate decided to conduct reconnaissance in the mess hall. Mealtimes were always revealing. You learn more about a unit's culture and dynamics watching them eat than you did reading personnel files. The mess hall was large and loud, filled with hundreds of Marines. The smell of institutional cooking hung in the air. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, standard military fare. Kate grabbed a tray and moved through the serving line. She found an empty table toward the back and sat down, using the opportunity to observe. The Marines sat in clearly defined groups, officers at some tables, enlisted at others. Within those divisions, further subdivisions by unit, rank, deployment history. The social architecture of military life, complex and rigid. Kate was halfway through her meal when she noticed 4 Marines approaching her table. They were all NCOs, sergeants and corporals, young men in their late 20s and early 30s with the confident bearing that came from rigorous training and combat deployments. The leader was a tall, muscular Marine with dark hair and intense eyes. His name tape read, Hendricks. "Excuse me, ma'am," Hendricks said. His tone was polite, but carried an edge of challenge. "Mind if we join you?" Kate gestured to the empty chairs. "Not at all, please." The 4 Marines sat down with coordinated precision. Hendricks leaned forward slightly. "So, Lieutenant Morrison," he said, "what brings a Navy officer to our little corner of paradise?" The question was casual, but Kate heard the underlying skepticism. "Liaison assignment," Kate replied simply, "coordinating joint operations between Navy Special Warfare and Marine units." "Special Warfare," said another Marine. His name tape read, Mills. "What kind of special operations experience does a Navy lieutenant have?" Kate took a bite of her meatloaf before responding. "The kind that's above your clearance level, Sergeant." The table fell silent. Hendricks's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Is that right? Well, that's interesting. We get a lot of Navy folks through here, and most of them are pretty eager to share war stories." "I'm not most Navy folks," Kate said calmly. "No," Hendricks agreed. "I don't suppose you are. Tell me, Lieutenant, what do you think of Marines?" The question was clearly a test. Kate could feel the attention of nearby tables turning toward them. This conversation was being watched. "I think Marines are highly trained, disciplined warriors who serve their country with honor," Kate said, "same as every other service member worth the uniform they wear." "That's a very diplomatic answer," Mills said. "But what do you really think?" Kate set down her fork and looked directly at him. "What I really think is that good Marines, like good sailors, are defined by their actions, not their service branch. And I think Marines who spend their time questioning other people's qualifications, instead of focusing on their own jobs, probably aren't the Marines I'd want covering my back in a firefight." The statement hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Hendricks's smile faded. The other Marines shifted in their seats. Kate could see that her response had been more confrontational than they expected from a Navy staff officer. "That's a pretty bold statement," Hendricks said, his voice dropping lower, "from someone who's probably never been in a real fight." Kate met his gaze steadily. "What makes you think I've never been in a real fight?" "Because if you had, you'd know that Marines don't leave anyone uncovered, regardless of what service they're from. And you'd also know that earning respect in this community requires more than just showing up with shiny lieutenant's bars and classified clearances." "You're absolutely right," Kate said, standing up from the table. "Respect is earned through actions. I guess we'll see what my actions are worth." She picked up her tray and walked away. As she disposed of her dishes and left the mess hall, Kate could feel dozens of eyes following her. Word would spread quickly through the base. By morning, every Marine at Pendleton would have heard some version of the encounter. Walking back to the BOQ, Kate replayed the confrontation in her mind. Something about it felt orchestrated. The timing of their arrival, the specific questions, even Mills's aggressive tone, it all seemed too coordinated to be spontaneous hazing. Someone had sent them to test her. The question was, who? Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message from her Pentagon contact. "How's integration proceeding?" Kate typed back, "About as expected. Give me a week. Problems? Nothing I can't handle." In her room, Kate changed into PT gear and worked through a quick routine. Push-ups, sit-ups, core exercises. Physical training had always been her way of processing stress, of preparing mentally for whatever challenges lay ahead. As she stretched afterward, she thought about the Marines she'd met. Hendricks and his squad were testing her, but she sensed something deeper in their challenge. They were protective of their community, suspicious of outsiders who claimed qualifications they couldn't verify. In their position, Kate might have reacted the same way. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Major Thompson would likely have heard about the mess hall incident. Her first official day would be colored by the perceptions already forming about her. But Kate had faced worse odds, in places where the stakes were life and death rather than professional reputation. She set her alarm for 05:30 and settled in for the night, knowing sleep would be elusive. It always was on the first night in a new place. Old habits from too many deployments to hostile territory, where sleeping too deeply could get you killed. Tomorrow she would begin the delicate process of proving herself without revealing who she really was. It would require all of her skills, not just the physical ones learned in SEAL training, but the psychological and tactical ones that had kept her alive when 40 Taliban fighters wanted her dead. As Kate drifted toward an uneasy sleep, she thought about the 11 men who hadn't made it home from that Afghan valley. Their faces haunted her dreams every night. She had failed to save them, but she would not fail to find the person who had sold them out. That was a promise written in blood and sand, and Lieutenant Kate Morrison always kept her promises. The alarm went off at 05:30, but Kate was already awake. Years of military service had trained her body to wake before any alarm. Another survival mechanism from too many forward operating bases where being the last one awake could be fatal. She went through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. PT gear, a 5-mile run around the base perimeter, shower, dress in her Navy working uniform. By 07:30, she was eating a quick breakfast of coffee and oatmeal from the small supplies she kept in her room. By 0800 sharp, she was standing outside Major Thompson's office. Major David Thompson was a compact man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and the weathered look of someone who had seen multiple combat deployments. His office walls were covered with photographs from various operations, and Kate noticed several commendations for actions in Iraq and Afghanistan. "Lieutenant Morrison," Thompson said as she entered, "please have a seat. Coffee?" "Thank you, sir. Black if you have it." Thompson poured 2 cups from a well-used coffee maker in the corner before settling behind his desk. "I heard you had an interesting evening in the mess hall yesterday," he said. Kate kept her expression neutral. "Just getting acquainted with some of the Marines, sir." "Sergeant Hendricks and his squad." Thompson leaned back in his chair. "Good Marines, actually. Hendricks has 2 Bronze Stars from his deployments. Mills, Ortega, and Chen are all solid performers. They're protective of their unit and skeptical of outsiders, but they're not troublemakers." "Understood, sir." "The thing is, Lieutenant, they're also influential among the enlisted personnel. How this situation develops between you and them is going to affect how the entire base views your assignment here." Kate nodded. "What would you recommend, sir?" Thompson studied her for a moment. "Honestly, I'd recommend you find a way to demonstrate your competence without getting into a pissing contest. These Marines respect action more than words. And right now, all they know about you is that you claim to have classified credentials they can't verify. What opportunities might present themselves for that kind of demonstration? Well, there's a joint training exercise coming up next week. Marines and Navy SEALs working together on a simulated hostage rescue scenario. You'll be observing as part of your liaison duties." Thompson paused, seeming to weigh his words. "But there might be opportunities for more active participation if you're qualified. A joint exercise, that would give Kate a chance to observe SEAL operations while maintaining her cover, and potentially to demonstrate capabilities without revealing their full extent. I'd be very interested in participating however I can, sir." "Good. In the meantime, I'm assigning you to shadow Lieutenant Colonel Stone on coordination protocols. She's our operations officer and has significant experience working with special operations units. You'll find her in building 2011. After leaving Thompson's office, Kate made her way across the base. The morning was already warm, and she could see Marines conducting physical training in various areas around the compound. Their discipline and intensity were impressive. Whatever else might be said about inter-service rivalries, The Marines maintained excellent standards. She was halfway to Building 2011 when she noticed him. A man watching her from across the parade ground, late 40s, muscular build, walking with a slight limp. There was something familiar about his posture, the way he moved, something that triggered alarm bells in Kate's tactical awareness. The man turned and walked away before Kate could get a closer look. She made a mental note and continued to her meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Stone. The rest of the morning passed in professional coordination meetings. Stone was a sharp officer in her late 30s, with auburn hair and a no-nonsense approach to operations planning. She walked Kate through various joint operation scenarios, asking probing questions about Navy procedures and sharing insights about Marine tactics. Kate found herself genuinely engaged in the work. This was the kind of coordination that could save lives in the field, preventing the miscommunications and assumptions that led to friendly fire incidents or tactical failures. It was nearly noon when Kate left Stone's office and headed toward the mess hall for lunch. She was 3 steps out of the building when she nearly collided with Frank Reeves. "Lieutenant Morrison," Reeves said pleasantly, "settling in okay?" "Yes, sir, thank you." "Good, good." Reeves fell into step beside her as they walked. "I wanted to apologize if I came on a bit strong yesterday. Sometimes an old man forgets his manners." "No apology necessary. I appreciated the advice." They walked in silence for a moment. Then Reeves said, quietly, "There's someone watching you. Man in his late 40s, muscular, walks with a limp on his left side. You noticed him this morning." Kate's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "I did. His name is David Foster, Master Sergeant, transferred here about 8 months ago from Camp Lejeune. Keeps to himself mostly, but I've seen him observing the PT sessions you're likely to participate in." Reeves paused. "Thing is, I've been around a long time, Lieutenant, and I know when someone's watching for operational reasons versus when they're just curious. This man is watching you operationally. You think he's a threat? I think you should be careful. And I think you should know that if you need backup, you've got it." Kate stopped walking and turned to face Reeves. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know what I'm doing here." Reeves smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "I told you yesterday, I've been around SEALs for 30 years. I know what it looks like when someone's hunting ghosts. And I know that sometimes the ghosts hunt back." Before Kate could respond, Reeves tipped an imaginary hat and walked away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with more questions than answers. That afternoon, Kate conducted her own reconnaissance. She pulled Master Sergeant David Foster's personnel file from the base record system, using her liaison officer credentials to access the information. The file looked clean, too clean. Foster had served in various Marine units over 20 years. Multiple deployments, solid performance reviews, no disciplinary issues. He'd transferred to Pendleton 8 months ago after completing a training rotation at Camp Lejeune. But something bothered Kate about the file. It read like a perfect paper trail. No gaps, no inconsistencies, no rough edges. In Kate's experience, real military careers had rough edges. Everyone had that one commander they didn't get along with, that one evaluation that was less than stellar. Foster's file was suspiciously perfect. Kate made another mental note and closed the file. That evening, as promised, Sergeant Hendricks found Kate in the gym. "Lieutenant," he said, approaching while she was running on a treadmill, "my squad runs PT every morning at 0600. Obstacle course behind building 154. If you're interested in joining us sometime, you're welcome to tag along." Kate recognized the invitation for what it was. Another test, framed as inclusion rather than confrontation. "What kind of PT do you usually do?" she asked. "Oh, you know, the usual Marine stuff. Running, obstacle course, combat conditioning." Hendricks's smile suggested his definition of usual might be different from most people's. "Nothing too intense. Sounds interesting. I'll think about it." "Fair enough. Offer stands whenever you're ready." As Hendricks walked away, Kate heard one of his squad members, Mills, mutter something to another Marine. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clearly skeptical. Kate made her decision quickly. If she was going to earn these Marines' respect, she needed to meet their challenges head-on. She caught up with Hendricks at the gym entrance. "Sergeant," she said, "about that PT invitation, what time and where did you say?" Hendricks turned, clearly surprised. "Oh, 600 at the obstacle course behind Building 154. You sure you want to subject yourself to Marine PT?" "I think I can handle it," Kate replied. "See you tomorrow morning." As she walked back to the BOQ, Kate allowed herself a small smile. She had just committed to a test she couldn't afford to fail. But that was fine. She'd been taking tests her entire life, and the harder they were, the more satisfying it was to pass them. That night, Kate lay in her bunk and thought about tomorrow. The obstacle course would be the first real demonstration of her capabilities. She'd have to be careful, showing enough skill to earn respect, but not so much that she raised uncomfortable questions about where that training came from. It was a delicate balance. But Kate Morrison had walked tightropes before, in places far more dangerous than a Marine Corps obstacle course. Her phone buzzed with another encrypted message. "Status?" Kate typed back. "Making progress. First real test tomorrow. Complications? None I can't manage. Will report after exercise." She set her phone aside and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be interesting, and somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. Someone who knew more about Lieutenant Kate Morrison than he should. Master Sergeant David Foster stood in his quarters, looking at the photograph on his wall. It showed a SEAL team, 8 years ago. Younger faces, different uniforms. And there in the back row was Kate Morrison. Younger, less scarred, but unmistakably the same woman. Foster smiled. "Hello again, Phoenix," he whispered to the photograph. "It's been a long time." His encrypted phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Initial contact completed. Subject responded as predicted. Mills performed adequately. Foster smiled and typed back. "Good. Proceed to phase 2. Then he sent another message to a different recipient. "Target confirmed. She's here. Proceed to phase 2. The response came back immediately. "Understood. Stand by for further instructions." Foster looked out his window toward the BOQ where Kate was sleeping. "I wonder if you remember me," he said softly. "I wonder if you know what's coming." In the darkness, the hunter and the hunted circled each other, neither yet aware that they were both prey in someone else's game. Tomorrow, Kate Morrison would face the Marines' obstacle course, but the real test was coming. And when it arrived, 11 ghosts from an Afghan valley would demand their justice. The alarm went off at 05:30, but Kate had been awake for an hour, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. Sleep had been impossible, not because of nerves about the obstacle course, but because of the dreams. The same dreams that haunted her every night. 11 faces, 11 voices calling her name across a desert valley. 11 men who trusted her to bring them home. Kate pushed herself out of bed and began her pre-dawn ritual. Stretching, breathing exercises, mental preparation. The obstacle course would be a test, but she'd faced worse, much worse. By 05:55, she was standing at the obstacle course behind Building 154. Sergeant Hendricks and his squad were already there, along with about a dozen other Marines. The obstacle course was a formidable construction of walls, ropes, crawling pits, and various climbing challenges designed to break the weak and forge the strong. Hendricks looked surprised to see her. "Lieutenant Morrison, didn't think you'd actually show." "I said I would," Kate replied simply. "Fair enough," Hendricks gestured to the course. "Here's how we usually do things. 15-minute warm-up run, then we tackle the obstacle course. We time each run, and whoever posts the slowest time buys drinks for everyone else." Kate nodded. "What's the course record?" "That would be Hendricks," said Corporal Mills. 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Kate studied the course layout. That was an impressive time. Very impressive. The kind of time that required not just strength and speed, but tactical thinking about the most efficient route through complex obstacles. The warm-up run was conducted at a pace that would have challenged most recreational athletes. Kate kept up easily, but she made sure not to look too comfortable. The key was to appear competent without appearing exceptional. As they returned to the obstacle course, Kate noticed more Marines had gathered to watch. After that came a rope climb, a crawling section under barbed wire, a series of monkey bars, another wall at 10 feet, a balance beam, and finally, a sprint to the finish. At Hendrix's signal, Kate exploded forward. She hit the first wall at speed, using her momentum to help carry her up and over. The technique was standard military training, nothing that would raise eyebrows. The rope climb was next. Here, Kate had to be careful. In SEAL training, she'd learned advanced rope techniques that would have cut her time significantly. Instead, she used a conventional hand-over-hand method, fast, but not suspiciously so. The crawling section was designed to be miserable. Mud, water, and barbed wire that required participants to stay low and move fast. Kate had crawled through similar obstacles under live fire during training exercises. She had crawled through worse in Afghanistan, with bullets cracking overhead and her teammates' blood soaking into the sand around her. This was nothing. She maintained a steady pace through the mud, neither struggling nor dominating. The monkey bars required upper body strength. Here, Kate's extensive training showed despite her efforts to moderate her performance. She moved across the bars smoothly, efficiently, her form nearly perfect. Behind her, she could hear murmurs from the watching Marines. The second wall was higher, 10 feet, requiring more technique. Kate planted her foot against the wall, pushed off, grabbed the top edge, and pulled herself over in one fluid motion. The balance beam was meant to slow people down, requiring them to traverse a narrow wooden beam suspended 3 feet off the ground. Kate's balance was exceptional, honed through thousands of hours of training. She crossed it quickly, barely pausing. As she approached the final sprint, Kate could hear the Marines calling out times. 450, 448, 445. She crossed the finish line and immediately regulated her breathing to appear more winded than she actually was. Hendrix clicked his stopwatch and stared at it for a long moment before looking up at her. 4 minutes, 43 seconds, he announced. That's the second best time anyone's posted on this course. Kate tried to look appropriately pleased, but not too excited. Not bad for a Navy officer, I guess. Not bad? Mills laughed. Ma'am, that's better than any of us have done except Hendrix himself. Hendrix was studying her face carefully. You've done this before. I mean, you've trained on courses like this. All Navy officers go through obstacle course training, Kate replied, which was technically true while revealing nothing. Some training, muttered Corporal Ortega, the third member of Hendrix's squad. But the mood among the Marines had shifted noticeably. The hostility and skepticism from the previous days had been replaced by curiosity and grudging respect. Kate had passed their test. Perhaps too well, but she had passed it. As the group began to break up, Private First Class Tommy Chen approached Kate. He was young, maybe 22, with eager eyes and the enthusiasm of someone still new enough to the Marine Corps to find everything exciting. That was incredible, ma'am, Chen said. How did you learn to move like that? Kate looked at the young Marine and saw herself 8 years ago. Young, eager, desperate to prove herself worthy of the uniform. Practice, she said simply, and good instructors. Do you think, Chen hesitated, do you think you could show me some techniques? I'm trying to improve my time. Before Kate could answer, Hendrix appeared beside them. Chen, don't harass the lieutenant with training requests on her second day here. It's no problem, Sergeant, Kate said. I'd be happy to offer some pointers when time allows. Hendricks nodded slowly. Actually, Lieutenant, my squad could probably benefit from your perspective on some tactical scenarios we've been working through. If you've got time this afternoon, maybe you could sit in on a planning session? The invitation was significant. Hendricks was opening the door to real cooperation, moving beyond the testing phase into potential partnership. I'll make time, Kate said. As she walked back to the BOQ to shower and change, Kate felt both satisfaction and unease. She'd successfully demonstrated competence without completely blowing her cover. But she'd also drawn more attention to herself, made herself more visible. In her experience, visibility could be dangerous, especially when someone was watching. That afternoon, Kate found herself in a classroom with Hendricks' squad, discussing tactical scenarios. Hendricks had set up a whiteboard with a rough diagram of a compound. So here's the situation, Hendricks began. We're providing perimeter security for a SEAL team conducting a hostage rescue. Our job is to hold the perimeter and prevent enemy reinforcements from interfering with the primary mission. Kate studied the diagram. She could see immediately that the Marines' planned positions had several vulnerabilities, but she had to be careful about how she pointed them out. What's your primary concern? She asked. Getting overrun if the enemy brings superior numbers, Hendricks replied. And your contingency if the primary assault team runs into unexpected resistance? Hendricks frowned. We hold our positions and wait for them to complete their mission. Kate chose her words carefully. Have you considered scenarios where the assault team might need immediate support? What if they encounter a situation that requires additional manpower? We send a fire team to reinforce them, Mills suggested. Which weakens your perimeter, Kate pointed out. What other options do you have? The Marines thought for a moment. Then Chen spoke up. We could reposition to provide covering fire from a different angle without abandoning our sectors. Exactly, Kate said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. The key is maintaining flexibility while not losing sight of your primary mission. For the next hour, they worked through various scenarios. Kate found herself impressed by the Marines' tactical thinking. They asked good questions, built on each other's ideas, showed real understanding of complex operational dynamics. But she also had to constantly monitor herself, making sure she didn't reveal too much knowledge, didn't suggest tactics that only someone with direct special operations experience would know. As the session wound down, Hendricks pulled Kate aside. Lieutenant, you seem to know an awful lot about special operations for a liaison officer. Kate felt the familiar flutter of caution. I've spent time studying joint operations as part of my Navy career. Understanding how different units work together is essential for effective coordination. Right, Hendricks said slowly. But some of the things you're talking about, those sound like lessons learned from actual experience, not just from studying manuals. The observation was dangerously accurate. Every officer learns from the experiences of others, Kate said. The Navy has extensive debriefs and case studies from previous operations. Part of professional development is absorbing those lessons. Hendricks nodded, but Kate could see he wasn't entirely convinced. She was walking a razor's edge between credibility and exposure. That evening, Kate was heading back to her quarters when she noticed him again. Master Sergeant David Foster. He was standing near the motor pool, apparently inspecting a vehicle, but Kate could tell from his posture that he was watching her peripherally. She made a decision. Instead of heading directly to the BOQ, Kate changed direction and walked toward the motor pool. Foster looked up as she approached, his expression neutral and professional. Master Sergeant, Kate said, I'm Lieutenant Morrison. I don't think we've been formally introduced. Foster extended his hand. His grip was firm, controlled. Master Sergeant David Foster, ma'am. Welcome to Pendleton. Up close, Kate could see the details Reeves had mentioned. The slight limp, the scar on his jaw. Something about his eyes was familiar, but she couldn't place it. I've seen you around the base, Kate said, keeping her tone casual. What's your assignment here? I work with the training battalion, help develop combat readiness programs. Foster's voice was smooth, practiced. And you're the new Navy liaison officer, correct? That's right. Coordinating joint operations. Interesting assignment, Foster smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. Must require someone with special qualifications. Just the standard Navy training, Kate replied. They stood in silence for a moment, each assessing the other. Well, Foster said finally, I should get back to work. Welcome aboard, Lieutenant. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other. As he walked away, Kate felt a cold certainty settle over her. David Foster was not who he claimed to be. She returned to her quarters and immediately began a deeper investigation. Using her classified access, she pulled Foster's complete service record, including assignment histories and deployment records. The files were extensive and detailed. Too detailed. Kate had seen enough fabricated identities during her career to recognize the patterns. Real service records had inconsistencies, gaps, the messy reality of military bureaucracy. Foster's records were seamless. Someone with significant resources had created this identity. She cross-referenced Foster's claimed deployment dates with unit rosters from those periods. In most cases, the names matched, but there were subtle discrepancies. A Master Sergeant David Foster had indeed served in those units, but the photographs in the historical records didn't match the man Kate had just met. The real David Foster had died 3 years ago in a training accident. Someone was using his identity. Kate's encrypted phone buzzed. A message from Frank Reeves. Need to talk. Building 321. Now. Kate grabbed her jacket and headed out into the night. Building 321 was a small structure near the edge of the base, used for storage and occasional training sessions. When Kate arrived, she found Reeves waiting in a dimly lit office. Close the door, Reeves said. Kate did, and immediately noticed that Reeves had swept the room for surveillance devices. A small electronic counter-surveillance unit sat on the desk, its lights indicating the room was clean. Your Master Sergeant Foster, Reeves began without preamble. I did some digging, called in some old favors with people who owe me. The real David Foster died in a car accident at Camp Lejeune 3 years ago. The man using that name now is someone else entirely. Kate felt her pulse quicken. Do you know who he really is? Reeves pulled out a tablet and showed Kate a photograph. It was old, maybe 10 years, but the face was unmistakable. Victor Kane, former Navy SEAL, dishonorably discharged 8 years ago for war crimes. Kate's blood ran cold as she read the file Reeves had compiled. Victor Kane had been one of the most talented SEALs of his generation. Brilliant tactician, exceptional operator. But he'd also been ruthless to the point of brutality. During operations in Iraq, he'd been accused of executing prisoners, of using excessive force against civilians. The investigation had been led by Kane's commanding officer at the time, Frank Reeves. You court-martialed him, Kate said softly. I reported him, Reeves corrected. The court-martial was handled by JAG. But yes, my testimony was the key evidence that got him kicked out of the teams. What did he do? Reeves's face darkened. He executed 3 civilians during a raid, claimed they were enemy combatants, but the evidence showed they were unarmed, trying to surrender. Kane killed them anyway, then tried to cover it up. And you exposed him. I did what was right. The teams are supposed to be better than that. We're supposed to be warriors, not murderers. Reeves paused. Kane swore revenge. Told me he'd destroy everything I'd built, everyone I'd trained. I thought it was just angry words from a bitter man. But then operations started getting compromised. SEALs started dying in ambushes that shouldn't have happened. Kate felt pieces clicking into place. Operation Phantom Ridge. Reeves nodded grimly. Your team wasn't the first. There were others. 3 operations in the 6 months before Phantom Ridge. 2 more since then. Every single one had been compromised. Someone sold the intelligence to the enemy. Kane. I believe so. He has the knowledge, the connections, and the motivation. He's getting revenge against me by killing the SEALs I trained, by destroying the legacy I built. Kate's jaw tightened. rage building in her chest. My team, they died because of some psychopath's vendetta? I think so, and I think he's here now for a reason. Something big is coming, something that will be the culmination of his revenge. Kate's mind raced. What do you know about upcoming operations? There's a visit scheduled, 3 days from now. Secretary of Defense is making an unannounced inspection tour of West Coast bases. Pendleton is on the itinerary, but it's highly classified. Only a handful of people know. If Kane gets that information, it would be the ultimate revenge. Kill the Secretary of Defense at a Marine base, using intelligence he gathered while masquerading as a Marine. It would devastate morale, destroy public confidence in base security, and humiliate everyone involved. Reeves looked at Kate. And I'm one of the few people who knows about the visit. If Kane succeeds, it will look like I failed to protect the very institution I dedicated my life to serving. Kate stood and began pacing. We need to expose him, arrest him before he can act. On what grounds? We have no proof. His identity documents are perfect. If we accuse him without evidence, he'll disappear and we'll never find him. Then we need to catch him in the act. Reeves smiled grimly. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Over the next hour, they planned their approach. They would leak false information about the SecDef visit, making it appear that the schedule had changed. If Kane took the bait and tried to pass the false information to his network, they'd have proof of his activities. It was risky, but it was the only play they had. As Kate prepared to leave, Reeves stopped her. There's something else you should know, he said quietly. Kane was at the same forward operating base as your team, right before Operation Phantom Ridge. He was there as a contractor, providing tactical consultation. He would have had access to your mission briefing. Kate felt rage building in her chest. He knew exactly where we were going, what we were doing, and he sold that information to the people who ambushed you. Why are you telling me this? Reeves met her eyes. Because when we face him, and we will face him, I need to know that you'll keep your head. Revenge is tempting. God knows I want it too. But we need to be smart, not emotional. We need to be better than he is. The SEALs I trained, the ones who died because of him, they deserve justice. Not revenge. Justice. Kate took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. I understand. I won't let rage make me reckless. Good, because you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for 11 men who can't fight anymore. Kate nodded and left. Back in her quarters, she sent an encrypted report to Pentagon, outlining what she'd discovered about Kane and the potential threat to the SecDef visit. The response came back within an hour. Maintain cover. Coordinate with Reeves. Do not engage Kane until we have confirmation. Secretary of Defense visit proceeds as scheduled. This is now a joint operation. Additional assets will be deployed to support. Kate read the message 3 times, feeling the weight of what was coming. The next morning, she joined Hendrix's squad for PT again. This time, she ran the obstacle course without holding back quite as much, posting a time of 4 minutes, 39 seconds. Hendrix whistled. You just beat my record. Beginner's luck, Kate said, but Hendrix wasn't buying it anymore. After the session, he pulled her aside. Lieutenant, I'm going to be straight with you. I don't know what your real story is, and maybe I don't need to know, but I can recognize an operator when I see one. Whatever you're really doing here, if you need help, my squad has your back. Kate looked at the Marine sergeant, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. She made a decision. There may come a time when I need to ask for that help, she said carefully. You've got it. No questions asked. It was a significant moment. Hendrix was offering trust without demanding explanations. In the military, that kind of loyalty was rare and precious. That afternoon, Kate and Reeves executed their plan. They created a falsified schedule showing the SecDef visit had been moved up by 1 day. The document was classified and marked with special access codes. Then Reeves, using his clearance as a civilian contractor, placed the document in a secure file room that he knew Kane had access to. Now they waited. Kate spent the next 18 hours in a surveillance position, watching the file room remotely through security cameras that Reeves had discreetly positioned. At 0300 hours, her patience was rewarded. A figure entered the file room. Master Sergeant David Foster, moving with the careful precision of someone who knew they were doing something wrong. Kate watched as Foster accessed the secure files, photographed the false document with a small camera, and left. She had him. But Reeves had been right. Photographing classified documents wasn't enough. They needed to catch him transmitting the information, to prove he was working with outside elements. Kate followed Foster remotely, using base security cameras to track his movements. He went to his quarters in the NCO barracks. Kate positioned herself outside, waiting. 30 minutes later, she detected an encrypted transmission emanating from Foster's room. He was sending the information. Kate immediately contacted Reeves and Pentagon. The response was swift. Do not engage. Maintain surveillance. SecDef visit now confirmed as operational bait. Prepare for possible hostile action in 48 hours. Kate felt her stomach tighten. They were going to let the threat develop, use the SecDef as bait to draw out Kane's entire network. It was tactically sound. It was also incredibly dangerous. The next day passed in tense preparation. Kate, she answered cautiously. Morrison, static, then a familiar voice, a voice she'd heard before, though she couldn't immediately place it. Hello, Phoenix. Kate's blood froze. That's right, the voice continued. I know who you are. I've known since the moment you arrived. Did you really think you could walk back into my world and I wouldn't recognize you? Kane, a dark chuckle. Very good, though I prefer my current name. David Foster has such a nice, trustworthy ring to it, don't you think? What do you want? What I've always wanted, to destroy everything Frank Reeves built, starting with the SEALs he trained. Your team at Phantom Ridge, that was just the beginning. Kate's hand tightened on the phone. You sold us out. You killed my team. I gave the Taliban information. What they did with it was their choice. Though I admit I was hoping for more casualties. You were surprisingly resilient, Phoenix. 14 enemies killed while wounded and alone. Impressive. Why are you calling? To give you a choice. Tomorrow the Secretary of Defense visits this base. I'm going to kill him. You can try to stop me, but you'll fail. And when you do, Frank Reeves will watch everything he cares about burn. Or you can walk away, leave the base tonight, disappear. Live with the knowledge that you could have stopped it, but chose to save yourself instead. That's not a choice. No, Kane agreed. I didn't think you'd take it. You're too much like Reeves. All honor and duty and sacrifice. It's going to get you killed, Phoenix, just like it got your team killed. Where are you? Closer than you think, farther than you can reach. We'll see each other soon, very soon. The line went dead. Kate immediately called Reeves. He's playing psychological warfare, Reeves said. Wants you angry and reckless. Don't give him that satisfaction. Understood. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we end this. Kate spent the rest of the night preparing, checking weapons, reviewing tactical plans, running through scenarios. At 0500, she received the final briefing. SecDef would arrive at 1400 hours. The visit would last approximately 2 hours. During that time, Kate, Reeves, and a small team of Marines would be on high alert, watching for any sign of Kane's attack. Pentagon had also deployed a counterterrorism unit, but they would remain hidden, backup assets to be called in only if the situation escalated beyond local control. Kate met with Hendrix's squad at 0700. Here's the situation, she said, abandoning pretense. We have credible intelligence that there will be an attack on the SecDef today. The attacker is highly trained, probably has a team with him, and knows this base intimately. The Marines listened intently, their faces serious. Your job is to provide security during the visit. But more than that, you need to watch for anything unusual. Anyone who doesn't belong, any vehicle or equipment that seems out of place. What's our rules of engagement? Hendricks asked. Protect the SecDef at all costs. Secondary priority is capturing the attackers alive if possible. But if it's a choice between your life and theirs, you put them down. Understood, ma'am. Kate looked at each of them. Hendricks, Mills, Ortega, and young Tommy Chen. I need to tell you something. This mission is personal for me. The person we're hunting, he's responsible for killing my entire team 2 years ago. If I seem too focused, too intense, I need you to keep me grounded. Can you do that? Hendricks stepped forward. We've got your 6, Lieutenant. Whatever happens. The others nodded agreement. At 1400 hours, the SecDef's convoy entered Camp Pendleton. Kate was positioned on a rooftop with Reeves, providing overwatch with scoped rifles. Hendricks' squad was on the ground, mixed in with the base security forces. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. The SecDef's vehicle pulled up to the administration building. Security personnel formed a protective cordon. The secretary emerged, flanked by bodyguards. Kate scanned the area through her scope, looking for threats. Nothing. The SecDef entered the building for his meeting with base command. Minutes passed. 10, 20, 30. Kate's radio crackled. Hendricks' voice. Contact. North perimeter. Multiple hostiles approaching in civilian vehicles. Before Kate could respond, an explosion rocked the south side of the base. Then another explosion from the east. Her radio filled with frantic voices. Multiple breach points. Armed attackers wearing stolen Marine uniforms. Communications being jammed. It was chaos. This is a diversion, Reeves said. The real attack is going to be another explosion, this one inside the administration building. They're inside, Kate said. They've been inside the whole time. She grabbed her rifle and sprinted for the stairs. Behind her, Reeves was already calling for backup. Kate's mind raced as she ran. Kane had outsmarted them. While they'd been watching for an external attack, he'd already infiltrated the base, planted explosives, positioned his team. She burst out of the building and ran toward the administration center. Gunfire erupted around her. Kane's team had revealed themselves, and they were engaging the Marine security forces. Kate saw 2 attackers in stolen Marine uniforms moving toward the admin building's rear entrance. She raised her rifle and fired twice. Both men dropped. More attackers appeared, 4 of them, advancing with professional precision. Former special operators, Kate realized. Kane had recruited his own team of disgraced warriors. She took cover behind a vehicle and began engaging them, her SEAL training taking over completely. No more holding back. No more pretending. This was what she was built for. 3 of the attackers went down under her accurate fire. The 4th took cover and returned fire, keeping her pinned. Then Hendricks and his squad arrived, laying down suppressing fire that forced the attacker back. Lieutenant, Hendricks shouted, SecDef is trapped inside. They've got explosives on the doors. Kate made her decision. Cover me! She sprinted toward the building while the Marines provided covering fire. An attacker stepped out to block her path. Kate didn't slow down. She shot him twice center mass without breaking stride. She reached the building's side entrance. The door was rigged with explosives, just as Hendricks had said. But Kate had been trained to bypass explosive traps. She examined the device quickly, identified the trigger mechanism, and carefully disarmed it. The door opened. Inside the building, she could hear gunfire. Someone was still fighting. Kate moved through the corridors with her rifle up, clearing rooms as she went. She found him on the 3rd floor. Victor Kane stood in the hallway, holding a detonator in one hand and a pistol in the other. Behind him, through an open door, Kate could see the SecDef and several staff members huddled in an office. Kane smiled when he saw her. Phoenix, he said, right on time. Kate kept her rifle trained on him. It's over, Kane. Your team is dead or captured. You're not getting out of here. Maybe not, but I can still complete my mission. He raised the detonator. This building is wired with enough explosives to bring it down. everyone inside dies, including you. I made my peace with that possibility years ago. Kane's smile widened. The question is, have you? Are you willing to die to save these people? Or will you run, like you ran from that Afghan valley? The words hit like physical blows. I didn't run, Kate said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. I was the only one left alive because you sold us out. And that must eat at you, Kane said. Survivor's guilt, the ghost of 11 men haunting your dreams. I gave you that gift, Phoenix. I gave you the burden of living when everyone else died. Kate's finger tensed on the trigger, but she held fire. Go ahead, Kane taunted. Shoot me. The detonator is on a dead man's switch. The moment my heart stops, this building explodes. A standoff. Kate's mind raced through options. There had to be a way. There had to be. A single gunshot echoed through the hallway. Kane jerked, blood spreading across his shoulder. The detonator fell from his hand. Kate dove forward, catching it before it hit the ground. She looked up to see Frank Reeves standing at the end of the hallway, rifle still raised. Old man still got it, Reeves said calmly. Kate secured the detonator while Kane collapsed, clutching his wounded shoulder. It's over, she said. Kane looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. You're going to stand trial, Kate continued. You're going to answer for every life you destroyed. That's real justice. Marines poured into the building, securing Kane and evacuating the SecDef. Kate stood in the hallway, her breathing still ragged as the adrenaline began to wear off. Reeves approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. You did good, Phoenix. Your team would be proud. Kate nodded, unable to speak. Outside, the sound of sirens filled the air as emergency responders descended on the base. The crisis was over. But for Kate Morrison, the real journey was just beginning. The aftermath of Kane's attack on Camp Pendleton unfolded in controlled chaos. Emergency vehicles screamed across the base. Medical teams triaged wounded Marines and security personnel. Bomb disposal units worked methodically through the administration building, locating and disarming the remaining explosives Kane's team had planted. Kate stood outside the building, watching the organized confusion with a detached numbness that she recognized from previous combat operations. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the hollow exhaustion that always followed extreme violence. Her hands had stopped shaking. That bothered her more than if they'd continued to tremble. It meant some part of her was getting used to this, getting comfortable with killing. Lieutenant Morrison. Kate turned to see a Marine colonel approaching. His name tape read, Cross, and she recognized him as the base commander she'd met on her first day. Sir, Kate said, coming to attention. At ease. Cross studied her for a moment. I've just gotten off the phone with the Pentagon. The Secretary of Defense is safe, thanks to you and Colonel Reeves. The attackers have been neutralized or captured. By any measure, this operation was a success. Kate said nothing. Success felt like the wrong word for a day that had ended with bodies in the street and blood on her hands. However, Cross continued, your cover as a liaison officer is obviously compromised. Every Marine on this base now knows you're not what you appear to be. Pentagon is sending a team to debrief you and determine next steps. They'll arrive within the hour. Understood, sir. There's one more thing. Cross's expression softened slightly. Sergeant Hendricks and his squad performed admirably today. They want to see you. Medical Bay, Building 417. Kate nodded and headed toward the medical facility. The medical bay was busy with wounded personnel receiving treatment. Kate found Hendricks and his squad in a corner area, being checked by corpsmen for minor injuries. Hendricks looked up as she approached. His uniform was torn and dirty, a bandage wrapped around his left forearm where he'd taken shrapnel from one of the explosions. Lieutenant, he said, standing despite the corpsman's protest. You're okay. I'm fine. Kate looked at each of them in turn. Hendricks with his bandaged forearm. Mills with a cut above his eye. Ortega having his ankle wrapped after taking shrapnel. Tommy Chen sitting quietly, hands still trembling slightly from his first real combat experience. 4 Marines who had started as skeptics and become brothers in arms. "Is it true?" Mills asked. "Are you really a SEAL?" Kate hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "I knew it," Chen said quietly. "From the first day, the way you moved, the way you saw everything, I knew you were something special." "How long have you been operating?" Hendricks asked. 8 years. Made it through BUD/S on my second attempt. Been with the teams ever since." There was a moment of silence as the Marines processed this information. "Operation Phantom Ridge," Hendricks said. "That was you, wasn't it? The sole survivor who held off 40 Taliban fighters. They said it was the most impressive last stand they'd seen in years." Kate felt her throat tighten. "My team died because someone sold them out. Because I couldn't save them." "Your team died because a traitor betrayed them," Hendricks corrected firmly. "And today you made sure that person will answer for it. You saved the Secretary of Defense. You saved this entire base from a catastrophic attack. That's not failure, ma'am. That's heroism." "We're honored to have fought alongside you," Mills added. The others nodded agreement. Kate felt something break inside her chest. Not breaking apart, but breaking open. These Marines, who had started as skeptics and challengers, had become something she hadn't expected to find again after Phantom Ridge. Brothers in arms. "The honor is mine," she said quietly. A corpsman approached. "Lieutenant Morrison, Pentagon debrief team is here. They're asking for you in Building 212. Kate took a breath and stood. "Duty calls." "Hey, Lieutenant," Tommy Chen called as she turned to leave. "Whatever happens next, whatever they assign you to do, just know that you've got friends here. Marines who have your back. Always." Kate smiled, feeling it reach her eyes for the first time in 2 years. "Thank you, Chen. That means more than you know." The debrief lasted 3 hours. 2 Pentagon intelligence officers, a Navy JAG attorney, and a SEAL team commander she didn't recognize went through every detail of the operation. Kate's infiltration of the base, her discovery of Kane's true identity, the coordination with Frank Reeves, the final confrontation. They were particularly interested in Kane's motivation and network. "We've identified 6 individuals in Kane's team," one of the intelligence officers said, consulting a tablet. "All former Special Operations personnel, all dishonorably discharged for various offenses. Kane recruited them over the past 3 years, building a private military contractor group that sold intelligence and conducted covert operations for the highest bidder." "Who was paying them for this operation?" Kate asked. "That's still under investigation. Kane isn't talking, but we've recovered encrypted communications that suggest he had backers. Foreign intelligence services, possibly, or extremist organizations looking to destabilize American military installations." The SEAL commander, whose name was Captain Mitchell, leaned forward. "Lieutenant Morrison, I need to ask you directly. During the final confrontation with Kane, did you at any point consider executing him rather than taking him alive?" Kate met his eyes. "Yes, sir, I considered it. But you didn't." "No, sir. Colonel Reeves reminded me that our job is justice, not revenge. Kane alive can give us intelligence on his network, his clients, everyone involved in the operations that got American service members killed. Kane dead is just one less monster in the world, but the system that enabled him continues." Mitchell nodded slowly. "That's good reasoning. Not everyone would have shown that restraint." "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted. I didn't show restraint out of noble intentions. I showed restraint because Colonel Reeves was there to remind me who I am. Without him, without the Marines backing me up, I might have made a different choice. This wasn't a solo operation. It was a team effort." "Noted." Mitchell made a note on his tablet. "Which brings us to your next assignment." Kate felt her pulse quicken. This was the moment she'd been dreading. Would they pull her back to Virginia? Assign her to a new covert operation? Bury her in some desk job to keep her away from the field? Pentagon has reviewed your performance over the past week, Mitchell continued. Your ability to maintain cover under pressure, your tactical decisions during the crisis, and most notably, your ability to build trust and coordinate with Marine personnel. We believe you have a unique skill set that could be valuable in a training capacity. Training, sir? The joint exercise you observed last week highlighted significant gaps in coordination between SEAL teams and Marine units. These gaps have existed for years, contributing to operational failures and unnecessary casualties. We want to fix that. The JAG attorney spoke up. Lieutenant Morrison, how would you feel about remaining at Camp Pendleton to develop and oversee a joint training program? You would work with both SEAL candidates and experienced Marine units, teaching them to operate as integrated teams. Kate felt her mind racing. Stay at Pendleton? Build a training program? What about my SEAL team assignment? You would retain your SEAL status, Mitchell said, but your primary duty station would be here. Think of it as a 3-year tour, after which you could return to regular team rotations if you choose. 3 years. 3 years to build something that might prevent future phantom ridges. 3 years to make sure other SEALs didn't die because of poor coordination or inadequate training. I accept, Kate said. Mitchell smiled. Good, because we've already started putting together resources. Colonel Reeves has agreed to serve as senior advisor to the program. You'll have full authority to design curriculum, select students, and set standards. This is your program, Lieutenant. Build it right. After the debrief ended, Kate walked across the base in the fading evening light. The physical damage from the attack was evident everywhere. Burn marks on buildings, debris being cleared. But the base was already recovering, Marines working to restore order and normalcy. She found Frank Reeves sitting on a bench near the obstacle course, watching the sunset. Mind if I join you? Kate asked. Please do. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the California sky turn orange and purple. They offered me the training program, Kate said finally. I know. I recommended it. Why? Reeves turned to look at her. Because you understand what it costs when training fails. You've paid that price in blood. And because you have the rare combination of technical expertise and emotional intelligence needed to actually change the culture. I don't feel qualified to teach anyone anything. I couldn't even save my own team. Your team was betrayed by a monster wearing an American uniform. That's not a training failure. That's evil. But what happened today, stopping Kane, saving the SecDef, coordinating with Marines you'd only known for a week, that shows you've learned from that tragedy. You've grown. Kate felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. I still see them every night. My team. They're still in that valley and I'm still failing them. They're not in that valley, Reeves said gently. They're gone, Kate. And I know that's the hardest truth to accept. But they're gone. And you're here, and you have a choice about what you do with that. You can let their deaths destroy you, or you can honor them by making sure future operators have better training, better coordination, better chances of coming home. Is that what you did after Kane? Yes, I spent 30 years training SEALs because I believed that good training and strong values could prevent men like Kane from infecting the teams. I failed with Kane, but I succeeded with hundreds of others. Men who served with honor and came home with their integrity intact. They sat in silence again, watching the last light fade from the sky. I'm scared, Kate admitted. Scared that I'll fail again. Scared that building this program will just give me a different way to watch people die. Fear is appropriate. Fear keeps us sharp. But don't let it paralyze you. Reeves stood and offered Kate his hand. Come on, there's something I want to show you. They walked across the base to a building Kate hadn't visited before. Inside was a small museum dedicated to Marine and Navy history, displays of uniforms and equipment from various eras. Reeves led her to a specific display. It showed photographs from a SEAL training class from 25 years ago. That's me, Reeves said, pointing to a young officer in the front row. And that's the class where I met most of the men who became my closest friends. 3 of them are in this photograph. All 3 died in combat over the years. One in Somalia, one in Afghanistan, one in a training accident. Kate looked at the young faces, so full of confidence and determination. I trained them, Reeves continued. I was their instructor, their mentor. And when they died, I asked myself the same questions you're asking now. Did I fail them? Could I have trained them better? Should I quit before I got anyone else killed? What did you decide? I decided that the best way to honor their memory was to train the next generation even better, to take the lessons from their deaths and use them to save future lives. That's what you're going to do with the Phantom Ridge program. Kate looked at him sharply. The Phantom Ridge program? That's what I'm calling it, in honor of your team. 11 men who died because coordination failed, because intelligence was compromised, because the system had weaknesses that a monster like Cain could exploit. We're going to fix those weaknesses. We're going to build something that makes sure their deaths meant something. Kate felt tears running down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's build it. 3 months later, Kate stood in front of the first class of the Phantom Ridge program. 20 students sat in the classroom. 10 Navy SEAL candidates, 10 experienced Marine NCOs. They eyed each other with a typical inter-service wariness, each group convinced they were superior to the other. Kate smiled. She'd been expecting that. Good morning, she began. My name is Lieutenant Kate Morrison. I'm a Navy SEAL. I've been operating for 8 years, including multiple combat deployments. 3 months ago, I stopped a terrorist attack on this base that would have killed the Secretary of Defense and dozens of other personnel. She had their attention now. I did not stop that attack alone. I had help from Marine Sergeant Jake Hendricks and his squad. I had help from Colonel Frank Reeves, a retired SEAL commander with more combat experience than everyone in this room combined. I had help from dozens of other Marines and sailors who put aside service rivalries and worked together to neutralize a threat. Kate walked to the center of the room. This program exists because my team died in an ambush in Afghanistan 2 years ago. They died because coordination failed, because the system had gaps that our enemies exploited. They died because we, as a military, hadn't done enough to make sure SEALs and Marines could operate seamlessly together. She pulled out a photograph and held it up. Her team. 11 men who would never grow old. These men were my brothers, and every one of you in this room is here to make sure no other operator dies the way they died. You're here to learn how to work together, how to trust each other, how to be part of something bigger than your individual service branch. Kate set the photograph down on her desk. This is going to be hard, harder than BUD/S, harder than any Marine training you've done. We're going to push you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Some of you will quit, some of you will fail, but those who make it through will be the best joint operators in the American military. She looked at each student in turn. Questions? A Marine corporal raised his hand. Ma'am, why should we trust SEALs? They think they're better than us. Before Kate could answer, one of the SEAL candidates spoke up. And why should we trust Marines? You guys are just infantry with boats. The room tensed. Kate let the moment hang for a few seconds, then smiled. Perfect. That's exactly the attitude we're going to fix. But not today. Today you're going to run the obstacle course. SEALs and Marines, mixed teams. Winner gets the rest of the day off. Losers stay for an extra PT session. You have 5 minutes to figure out your team composition and strategy. The room erupted in conversation as the students began organizing. Kate stepped outside where Frank Reeves was waiting. How does it feel? He asked. Terrifying, Kate admitted, but also right. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yes, Reeves agreed. It is. Over the following weeks, Kate threw herself into the program with an intensity that surprised even her. She designed training exercises that forced SEALs and Marines to depend on each other. She brought in guest instructors from other special operations units. She created scenarios based on real operations, including the one that had killed her team, making sure the students understood that the training had life or death consequences. But she also made sure to check on the individual students to understand their motivations and struggles. Tommy Chen had been accepted into the program after his actions during the Kane attack. He approached everything with enthusiasm that sometimes bordered on recklessness. "Chen," Kate said one afternoon after a particularly aggressive training exercise, "you're trying too hard." "Ma'am, you're so eager to prove yourself that you're taking unnecessary risks. That's going to get you or your teammates killed in a real operation." Chen's face fell. "I just want to be good enough, like you." "I'm not a standard you should aspire to," Kate said firmly. "I made mistakes that got people killed. Learn from my failures, not my successes." "But you saved the base. You stopped Kane." "I stopped Kane because I had help. Because I finally learned to trust my team instead of thinking I had to do everything alone." That's the lesson, Chen. Not the individual heroics, but the team coordination. Chen nodded slowly, processing this. "You're going to be a good operator," Kate continued, "but only if you learn to balance your enthusiasm with tactical discipline. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am, I will." "Good, your future teammates are counting on you." Jake Hendricks had also joined the program, not as a student, but as an assistant instructor. His practical experience and natural leadership made him invaluable in bridging the gap between SEAL and Marine cultures. One evening, after a particularly challenging day of training, Hendricks found Kate in her office reviewing performance evaluations. "You need to go home, Lieutenant," he said. "It's 2,200 hours. The students left 4 hours ago. Just finishing these evaluations." "The evaluations can wait. You're burning yourself out." Kate looked up. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. I've seen this before. Operators who push themselves until they break because they're trying to outrun their ghosts." Hendricks sat down across from her. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted. Your team didn't die because you failed them. They died because a traitor sold them out. That's not on you. And working yourself to exhaustion isn't going to bring them back." "I know that," Kate said quietly. "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to save 11 men who are already gone by training 20 who are still alive. That's noble, but it only works if you're healthy enough to actually do the training." Kate set down her pen and rubbed her eyes. "How do you let it go? The people you couldn't save." "You don't. You carry them with you, but you make sure they're pushing you forward, not dragging you down." Hendricks stood. "Go home, get some sleep. The program will still be here tomorrow." As the weeks turned to months, Kate began to see results. The students started functioning as integrated teams. SEALs learned to appreciate Marines' infantry tactics and fortitude. Marines learned to value SEALs' specialized skills and flexibility. More importantly, they learned to trust each other. The program's reputation spread. Other bases requested similar training. The Pentagon began discussing expansion. And slowly, gradually, Kate found that the dreams were changing. She still saw her team, still heard their voices, but now, instead of watching them die over and over, she dreamed of training sessions where she taught new operators the lessons her team had paid for with their lives. The ghosts weren't gone, but they were becoming teachers instead of tormentors. 6 months after the program began, Kate stood at Arlington National Cemetery. It had taken that long to arrange the memorial service. Her team had been buried months ago, but the families had wanted to wait until Kate could attend, until she was ready. 11 headstones stood in a row, each marked with a name, rank, and dates of service. Fresh flowers had been placed at each grave. Frank Reeves stood beside Kate in his dress blues. Despite being retired, he'd earned the right to wear the uniform for occasions like this. Also present were the families, parents, siblings, wives, children, people whose lives had been shattered by a single act of betrayal in a distant desert. Kate had been dreading this moment for months. What could she possibly say to these people? How could she explain that she'd survived while their loved ones hadn't? But when the time came, the words flowed naturally. "I'm Lieutenant Kate Morrison," she began, her voice carrying across the cemetery. "I had the honor of serving with these 11 men. They were the best SEALs I've ever known, the best warriors, the best brothers." She looked at each headstone in turn. They died doing what they loved, serving the country they believed in. They died fighting an enemy that wanted to destroy everything we stand for. And they died knowing that their sacrifice meant something. Kate pulled out a small box. Inside were 11 SEAL tridents, each one engraved with a name. "I've carried these with me since that day in Afghanistan. 11 reminders of what I lost. 11 reasons to keep fighting. But today, I'm giving them back." She moved to the first headstone and placed a trident at its base. "Petty Officer First Class Marcus Rodriguez, you taught me that leadership means putting your team first, even when it costs you everything." Second headstone, Senior Chief Adam Thompson, "You showed me that experience and wisdom matter more than youth and enthusiasm." She continued down the line, placing a trident at each grave, speaking a brief memory of each man. When she reached the final headstone, her voice broke. "Lieutenant Commander James Harris, you were my team leader, my mentor, my friend. You taught me what it meant to be a SEAL. And when everything went wrong, when the world was burning and chaos was everywhere, you stayed calm. You gave orders that saved my life, even though you knew you weren't getting out." Kate placed the final trident and stepped back. "I survived because of these men, and I've spent the last 6 months making sure their deaths weren't meaningless. I've built a training program in their honor, a program that will teach future operators to work together, to trust each other, to be better than we were." She addressed the families directly now. "I know that doesn't bring them back. I know that nothing I do can fill the holes they left in your lives. But I want you to know that they mattered. They mattered to me, to the Navy, to this country, and they always will." After the ceremony, families approached Kate one by one. Rodriguez's mother, a small woman with tear-streaked face, hugged Kate tightly. "Thank you for bringing him home," she whispered. "Thank you for surviving to tell his story." Thompson's wife shook Kate's hand firmly. "Adam talked about you in his letters. He said you were going to be one of the great ones." He was right. Harris's father, himself a retired Navy officer, saluted Kate. "My son chose well when he chose you for his team," he said. "He would be proud of what you're doing now." Each interaction was a small piece of healing. Not forgiveness exactly. Kate would never forgive herself for surviving, but acceptance, understanding, the knowledge that she honored their memory through action rather than grief. As the families departed and the cemetery grew quiet, Kate stood alone among the headstones. Frank Reeves approached quietly. "How are you doing?" he asked. "Better," Kate said honestly. "Not healed, but better. That's all we can ask for." They stood in silence for a moment. "You know," Reeves said, "I've been thinking about legacy, what we leave behind when we're gone. For years I thought my legacy was the SEALs I trained, but I was wrong." "What is it then?" "It's the programs we build, the systems we create that outlive us. Your Phantom Ridge program is going to train thousands of operators over the years. Each one of them will be better prepared, better coordinated, safer because of what you're building. That's legacy. That's how we honor the fallen." Kate nodded, understanding settling over her like a warm blanket. "Come on," Reeves said. "I'll buy you dinner. We can talk about the next class of students. I hear we've got some real challenges coming up." As they walked away from the graves, Kate looked back one final time. "Rest easy, brothers," she said softly. "I've got the watch now." 1 year after the attack on Camp Pendleton, the Phantom Ridge program held its first graduation ceremony. All 20 students from the inaugural class had made it through. 10 SEALs, 10 Marines, now forged into a unified team that could operate anywhere, under any conditions. The ceremony was held on the base parade ground, with spectators including Pentagon officials, base command, and the families of the Phantom Ridge team members who had been killed in Afghanistan. Kate stood at attention in her dress blues as each graduate received their completion certificate. Tommy Chen had finished at the top of the class, his enthusiasm finally balanced with tactical discipline. Mills and his SEAL partner stood together, both grinning with the satisfaction of having overcome their initial skepticism. As the ceremony concluded, Secretary of Defense approached the podium. He had specifically requested to attend his first return to Camp Pendleton since the attack. "Lieutenant Morrison," he began, "asked me to say a few words today. I agreed, because this program represents everything that's right about the American military." He looked at the graduates. "You 20 warriors represent the future of joint operations. You've learned to set aside service rivalries and work as a unified team. You've honored the memory of fallen SEALs by becoming better operators, and you've shown that tragedy can be transformed into triumph through dedication and hard work." The SecDef turned to Kate. "Lieutenant Morrison, on behalf of the President and the Department of Defense, I'm pleased to present you with the Defense Superior Service Medal for your actions in stopping the attack on this base and for your exceptional work in developing this training program." Kate stepped forward to receive the medal, feeling the weight of it as it was pinned to her uniform. But more than the medal, what struck her was the applause. The graduates, the spectators, the families, all of them recognizing not just her individual actions, but the journey she'd taken from broken survivor to builder of something greater. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Kate found herself surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her, to thank her, to tell her how the program had changed their perspective on joint operations. Through the crowd, she saw Frank Reeves talking with some of the graduates' families. He caught her eye and nodded, a simple gesture that conveyed pride and satisfaction. Jake Hendricks approached with a beer in hand. "Hell of a year, ma'am," he said. "Hell of a year," Kate agreed. "So what's next? You've built the program, graduated the first class. What's the encore?" Kate smiled. "More classes, better curriculum, expansion to other bases. This is just the beginning, Hendricks. We're going to change how the entire military thinks about joint operations." Ambitious. "I learned from the best." Kate looked around at the celebration. "You know what the best part is? I don't have nightmares anymore. I still dream about my team, but now they're not dying. They're watching, approving, maybe even proud. They should be proud. You took their deaths and made them mean something." As the evening wore on and the crowd thinned, Kate found herself back at the obstacle course where this had all begun. She stood at the starting line, remembering that first morning when she'd run it trying to prove herself to skeptical Marines. "Mind if I join you?" Kate turned to see Tommy Chen approaching. "Can't sleep?" Kate asked. "Too excited. I got my orders today. I'm headed to SEAL training next month. BUD/S Class 385. "Congratulations, Chen. You've earned it." "I wouldn't be here without you, ma'am. You taught me what it really means to be an operator. Not just the physical skills, but the mindset, the teamwork, the understanding that we're all part of something bigger." Kate felt pride swell in her chest. "You taught yourself, Chen. I just provided the framework." "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "The nightmares, the survivor's guilt, does it ever completely go away?" Kate considered the question carefully. "No, it doesn't go away, but it changes. It becomes part of who you are, part of what drives you. The key is making sure it drives you toward building something good, not toward destroying yourself." "How do you do that?" "You find a purpose bigger than yourself. For me, it's this program, making sure future operators don't die the way my team did. For you, it might be something different. But as long as you're moving forward, as long as you're making the world better, the ghosts become teachers instead of tormentors." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you, ma'am, for everything." As he walked away, Kate turned back to the obstacle course. On impulse, she stepped up to the starting line. She hadn't run the course in months, too focused on teaching others to take time for her own training. Kate launched forward, hitting the first wall at full speed. This time she didn't hold back. She used every technique, every skill she'd learned in 8 years as a SEAL. The advanced rope climbing methods, the efficient bar transitions, the tactical approach to each obstacle. She flew through the course like water flowing downhill, smooth and unstoppable. When she crossed the finish line, she checked her watch. 4 minutes, 18 seconds. A new course record. Kate stood there, breathing hard, feeling truly alive for the first time since that day in the Afghan desert. A voice called out from the darkness. Not bad for someone who spent a year behind a desk. Frank Reeves emerged from the shadows, smiling. Couldn't sleep either? Kate asked. Old men don't need much sleep. We're too busy being proud of what we've accomplished. Reeves walked over and looked at the course. 4:18. That's impressive. You planning to challenge every record on this base? Maybe. Feels good to push myself again. It does, but remember, you're not just an operator anymore. You're a teacher, a builder. Your legacy isn't going to be the records you set, but the lives you change. Kate nodded. I know, but sometimes I need to remember who I was, where I came from. The phoenix who rises from the ashes, Reeves said softly. That's who you are now. Not the broken survivor, not the haunted warrior. You're the one who took tragedy and built something beautiful. They stood together in the quiet night, two warriors from different generations, united by shared purpose and mutual respect. Thank you, Kate said, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for reminding me what justice looks like, for helping me find a way to honor my team. You don't need to thank me. You did the hard work. I just provided guidance. No, Kate said firmly, you provided more than that. You provided hope. You showed me that life after tragedy is possible, that purpose can emerge from pain. That's a gift I can never fully repay. Reeves placed a hand on her shoulder. Then don't repay it, pass it on. Teach the next generation what I taught you. Lieutenant Kate Morrison, call sign Phoenix, had risen from the ashes of tragedy to build something greater than herself, and she was just getting started. Epilogue. 3 years later. The Phantom Ridge program had expanded to 12 military installations across the United States and 3 forward operating bases overseas. Over 800 operators had graduated from the program, forming a network of SEALs and Marines who could seamlessly coordinate in any operational environment. Joint operations success rates had increased by 47%. Coordination failures had dropped to near zero. And most importantly, the casualty rate for joint missions had decreased significantly. The Victor Kane trial had concluded 18 months ago. Military tribunal found him guilty of treason, espionage, and multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder. He was serving multiple life sentences at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth. His intelligence on foreign buyers and terrorist networks had led to the dismantling of 3 major arms trafficking operations. Justice had been served. Not revenge, justice. The program had become the gold standard for inter-service training. Kate, now promoted to lieutenant commander, stood in a Pentagon briefing room presenting the program's results to a room full of admirals and generals. The data speaks for itself, she concluded. Integrated training produces better operators. Better coordination saves lives. This isn't just a nice idea, it's proven, measurable improvement in mission effectiveness. One of the admirals raised a hand. Commander Morrison, What's your recommendation for next steps? Kate advanced her presentation to the final slide. Expand the program to include all Special Operations Forces, not just SEALs and Marines, but Army Rangers, Air Force Special Tactics, everyone. Create a unified Special Operations training pipeline that breaks down service barriers from day one. There was murmuring around the room. This was a radical proposal. That would require significant restructuring, another general pointed out. Yes, sir, it would. But the results would be worth it. We've proven the concept works at battalion level. Imagine if it worked at the entire Special Operations community level. The discussion continued for another hour, but Kate could see she'd made her case. After the briefing, she stepped outside and called Frank Reeves. "How did it go?" he asked. "I think we're going to get approval for the expansion. They're cautious, but they can't argue with the results." "Good. You've earned this, Kate. Everything you've built, all the lives you've saved, it's remarkable. I couldn't have done it without you." "Maybe, but you're the one who kept going when it would have been easier to quit. You're the one who transformed personal tragedy into institutional improvement. That's all you." Kate looked out at the Washington skyline. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. 3 years ago, I was the broken survivor of an ambush. Now I'm briefing Pentagon leadership on transforming special operations training." "You were never broken," Reeves corrected gently. "You were hurt, grieving, lost, but not broken. Broken things can't be rebuilt. You were always whole, just temporarily unable to see your own strength." "Well, I see it now, and I'm using it." "Yes, you are. Your team would be proud." After hanging up, Kate walked to her car. On the passenger seat was a photograph of her original SEAL team, the same one she'd kept face down in her drawer for so long. Now it sat upright, a reminder of purpose rather than a source of pain. She picked it up and studied the faces. 11 men frozen in time, forever young, forever warriors. "We did it," she said softly. "We changed things. You didn't die for nothing." Tommy Chen had graduated BUD/S 6 months after completing the Phantom Ridge program, becoming one of the youngest SEALs in recent history. Now he was on his first deployment, putting the training to use in the field. He'd sent Kate a message last week. "Your training saved my life yesterday. Thank you." Jake Hendricks had been promoted to gunnery sergeant and now ran the East Coast version of the Phantom Ridge program at Camp Lejeune. Ortega and Mills were both instructor assistants at Pendleton, continuing to bridge the gap between SEALs and Marines. As she drove back to her hotel, Kate thought about the journey. From the Afghan desert to Camp Pendleton, from broken survivor to program builder, from Phoenix, the sole survivor, to Phoenix, the one who helped others rise. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, failures, moments of doubt. But she'd kept going, for her team, for future operators, for herself. And now, looking at everything she'd accomplished, Kate Morrison finally understood what Frank Reeves had tried to tell her 3 years ago. Legacy isn't about the records you set or the battles you win. Legacy is about the lives you change and the systems you build that outlive you. 11 men had died, but their deaths had sparked a transformation that would save thousands. That was legacy. That was justice. That was peace. Kate smiled as she drove through the Washington night, no longer haunted by ghosts, but accompanied by guardian angels who had shown her the way forward through their sacrifice. She was Phoenix, and she would never stop rising.